course, yesterday the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, was in and is still in Akwa Ibom State as part of Versa 2, looking into launching some of the key policy direction of the Akwa Ibom State government in line with the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration's renewed hope agenda. Of course, the Vice President officially launched the Rise Human Capital Development Strategic Plan and Local Government Human Capital Development Implementation Roadmap, which underscores the government's commitment to investing in human capital development, recognizing it as both a moral imperative and an economic necessity. Now, and of course, this is something that the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also seeks to do, investing in building capacity of Nigerians across board. And coming back to Akwa Ibom State, since coming on board, His Excellency Governor Pastor Umo Eno has been very intentional in terms of capacity building. We had the Ibom-led initiated by Governor Pastor Umo Eno, and then of course the DASAC, and then different training centers that has been instituted by the Arise agenda, which seeks to prioritize, capacity building in the area of business, in the area of agriculture, in the hospitality industry, tourism, and then of course engineering, art and craft, food, catering, hairstylists and other things, including production, that the governor has focused its attention on. Just recently we had over 250 graduates graduating from DASA, which happens to be the first batch of graduates from that institution, which is of course in existence between the Akwa Ibom State government in partnership with the Lagos State University. Of course, some of this key policy direction has been interpreted by bringing physical structures, physical institutions that helps to interpret what the governor hopes to achieve. Of course, we've also seen, on different occasions, the governor giving out scholarship slots to people who have been part and parcel of his administration, the cheerleaders, the chairladies, the green girls, the purple girls, the orange girls, as the case may be, giving them an opportunity to first and foremost learn how to run businesses, have the professional, skill set in the different areas of the interest that they have shown or indicated, and then of course going ahead to also support them with the needed financial resources. So the Vice President was in Akwa Ibom State yesterday. For those of us who tune into the TV and radio stations that aired the program live, including sister station Planet 101.1 FM, I think that for most Akwa Ibom people was the signature signing of the collaboration that we currently have between the Akwa Ibom State government and the federal government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. By the way, Akwa Ibom happens to be in the first state to follow suit in the direction of President Bola Tinubu as far as launching such a policy direction and blueprint is concerned.
It's very important to see that this resonates at the federal level, because part of the things we are seeing is, remember that Akwa Ibom State is PDP governed, and you have to, your alignment with the federal government and his renewed hope agenda must be very visible if we're also going to be able to attract a lot of federal, whether it's a federal character in terms of appointment, or if we're also going to see a lot of favors in terms of how many federal projects are cited in Akwa Ibom. And that's something that we've seen Governor Pastor Umo Eno try to incite from the get-go of his administration. But then again, that part of the crux of the Umo Eno-led administration in Akwa Ibom is human capital development, and we have seen him do that time and time again. Several colloquiums that have been held. He tries to hear the minds and opinions of several people across sectors to do things, and that is empowering the people. And now also part of the key things that the Vice President, who is currently in Akwa Ibom, has also alluded to is the fact that Nigeria has, Akwa Ibom State is the first state in Nigeria to develop a strategic plan for the implementation of the Human Capital Development Roadmap. So it's not just about saying it and not having a plan on ground. Akwa Ibom is doing different, has gone several steps higher. Of course, also appreciating Governor Pastor Umo Eno for not only adopting the Human Capital Development Framework, but localizing its operation and placing people in the center of public policies. So we also see a lot of homegrown people being the facilitators for this human capital development, and it's a great thing. It's a win-win for Akwa Ibom people, and of course the governor of Akwa Ibom continues to be lauded for his leadership style. I think in some of the visuals that you see on the screen this morning, part of the reasons why private education is on the rise and a lot of people are opting for private education as opposed to public schools that our parents went to and became the men and women that they are is because the quality of public education over time had continued to be watered down. But now we see that we see that the Governor Umo Eno's administration is trying to make public schools appealing once again. I mean, if you have a classroom of that has you under 5 in class, wouldn't you send your child to a public school once you can ensure that the teachers are of quality? But let's give voice to this particular visual coming out of the Akwa Ibom State government.
Well, the governor is a game changer. He's a man with a vision, a mission, and the drive to redefine the meaning and concept of modern leadership. The reclamation effort is worthy of emulation by others self-threatened with gully erosion. For the governor to make efforts to reclaim 69 hectares and transform it into a park, an entire ecosystem with sporting facilities, with hotels, with conference centers. It's a landmark achievement. And of course, the schools. As I've always said, education is the greatest game changer. That was why I was curious to visit the school. The school is a very functional school with all the facilities needed for 21st century education. Your Excellency, for your leadership, and most importantly, for your empathy and commitment to the common good. On top of all, your respect for humanity. The launch of the Arise Human Capital Development Strategy by His Excellency Governor Umo Eno is a template for each set of the Federation. It's a strategy that acknowledges that we can't build an enduring castle without a solid foundation. What Akwa Ibom has shown us here isn't just progress, it's called leadership. It has become the first state in the nation to localize a HCD vision in its truest form. While other states have a strategy tailored towards the state, Akwa Ibom has taken a step forward by adopting the strategies at all local government areas. If we have come to the conclusion that we must expand our national human capital, then we must pay attention to immunization, stunting, learning outcomes, youth unemployment, maternal mortality, and the data to understand them. That is why I commend Akwa Ibom, not only for your outstanding performance, but for daring to dream bigger. With an under 5 mortality rate of 80, compared to the national average of 110, and with only 3.5% of primary age children out of school, far below the national average of 25.6%. Your state is not merely compliant with our national vision, you are ahead of the curve. The period of politicking is over. Now we are in the pace of development. And Governor Umo Eno is carving a niche for himself and for the people of Akwa Ibom. Leadership is an onerous burden. His ability to carry all tendencies, his ability, his focus, is laser focus on adding value to his state. He's not a loud governor. He doesn't grandstand.
He's not a controversial person. And for that, Your Excellency, we are mightily proud of you. And you are one person that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu holds in the highest esteem.
I mean, the governor of Akwa Ibom State is doing great, and one of the things that we recently were talking about yesterday is the fact that Governor Umo Eno is currently Nigeria's most decorated governor in terms of the number of awards that he has won on the heel of the things that he has done. I promise you, Akwa Ibom is as good as it sounds. So he's doing quite well for himself in terms of governance. There's more. I mean, we say that to whom much is given, much is expected. There is so much more that the governor can actually do. We have a lot of parallels that we can draw. You can draw, the UAE. You can draw several other nations of the world that were literally like deserts, but then have been turned into destination sites. We have the intellectual capacity. We have, to an extent, the funds, to be able to do that. And if he keeps on this trajectory, I mean, his entire administration might actually be the legacy, not a particular project.
Well, I'm going to look at some of the key things that the governor has re-echoed consistently, just like yesterday. One of the key things that he said, and I'd like to quote the governor directly, he said, "We will always continue to prioritize the development of our people and work with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, because development and human capital investment should not be colored with political affiliations." That's according to His Excellency Pastor Umo Eno. Now, one thing that we've consistently spoken about on this set has been the need for politicians to distinguish between when they should be playing politics and when they should be leaders, because these two activities, these two obligations, these two necessities are completely different, completely separate from each other. Now, while one will be clouded by interest and sentiments of whichever political party or whichever political interest one is tilted towards, the other is supposed to be apolitical, completely devoid of personal interest, ethnic interest, political party interest, to our collective interest. And that's one of the things that Akwa Ibom people are beginning to celebrate as far as this administration is concerned. For 2 years running or 3 years running, we've been talking about the Akwa Ibom vision, or the Akwa Ibom agenda, or having the Akwa Ibom agenda, and having every apparatus, every individual within the political space across the different political parties coming together to unite with one voice for one singular purpose, that is the upliftment of Akwa Ibom State. That's the upliftment of the South region, the upliftment of our collective wealth and resources. And then for that to actually happen, you're going to look at deliberate measurable steps and approach, processes, direction in terms of policies and laws towards making sure that these becomes a reality. First off, considering the fact that Akwa Ibom State has been considered as a civil service state, regardless of the fact that we have oil and we have all of these contributions going to the national treasury, we have not in years past, almost 40 years Akwa Ibom will turn in the next 2 years. This year Akwa Ibom becomes 38, right? And so in the next 2 years we are going to become 40 years. Can we look back as a state and say in 40 years we have been able to, can our politicians, can our leaders, successive administration come back and say in the last 40 years of our existence as an entity, as a state, we have been able to move from point A to point G? And these are the developmental strides that we have been able to achieve. It's not about the mantra, the political greed that, every administration comes up with. At the end of the day, what are the tangible evidence of these political mantras? What are the tangible evidence of these leaderships? What are the tangible impact that our people can look back on and say, in the administration of Governor Pastor Umo Eno, for instance, we were able to have 20% increment in the number of millionaires from Akwa Ibom State. We were able to have 20% increment in the numbers of millionaires who have been able to, in the last 8 years of his administration, establish successive business plans, and then of course are still living these businesses. And these businesses have gone past just existing in Akwa Ibom State to also having branches outside of Akwa Ibom State. Yesterday, I came across a conversation that trended on social media, particularly within the Akwa Ibom State social media space and Facebook. And the question, somebody posed it and said, look, you guys say there are no industries in Akwa Ibom State, but Champion Breweries, is operating in Akwa Ibom State. And then the person got the worst kinds of backlash. And what were the backlashes? One, you're talking about Champion Breweries that has been in existence for God knows how many years. That is almost 50 years. Longer than the state. Yeah. We're not talking about, that kind of business. I mean, it's been there in existence. We're talking about businesses that have been brought in by successive administration. How many of them are standing tall today? How many of them are employing? How many of them are still functional? How many of them are still operational? Now, that is on the part of government. On the other side of the individual, how has the economy of Akwa Ibom State been able to, how has the successive administration been able to impact on the lives of Akwa Ibom people such that they're able to start businesses? And these businesses can come back. We are literally in Akwa Ibom, if we were to take stocks of businesses that have existed for upwards of 20, 30 years, 10 years even, in Akwa Ibom State, owned by individuals, we will not see more. The only thing that we will literally see across the nook and crannies of Akwa Ibom State are hotels, and are still springing up in the numbers. While we do not have anything wrong with people building hotels, when you build hotels and we don't have other businesses, the reason the tourism industry in Lagos or the hotel business in Lagos is thriving is because you have multiple companies, you have multiple businesses, and this draws the visits, it draws the tourists into the state, which gives you the patronage and occupation rate. But when you don't have the businesses in your state, you don't have what draws tourists, apart from the fact that, okay, Akwa Ibom is now in the safest state, is a tourism destination with all that is happening in the state, and we now have people coming in for conferences. Most of the hotels in the state will lay dormant unoccupied for days, for weeks, for months even. So it comes down to these deliberate efforts that have been taken. And that is part of the reason that Akwa Ibom people have said, okay, for the first time we're seeing a difference in terms of policy direction. We're seeing a commitment to not just dash government money to individuals who claim to be business people in papers but don't have any physical business. We have seen successive administration in this state give out millions to individuals, and they say, oh, poultry business, they say piggery, they say fishery, they say, oh, we're going into cassava farming, and all of that. But these guys just get the money and they put it into some other thing. They get it and throw it away in beer parlors. They get it and go get married. They get it and go start having multiple girlfriends. At the end of the day, there is no single way to track the number of people that have benefited from the government. Which is why at this point in time, I think one of the conversations that surfaced yesterday was for the Akwa Ibom State government to actually implement what the governor spoke about during his campaign period. When he said, when we help your business as a state government, we give you a grant, we are going to paint your business environment so that people will see that this business is a beneficiary of the help of the Akwa Ibom State government. We have not seen that happening.
I've seen a couple of places.
I haven't seen any.
There is one on the axis of the Ita Market, just opposite Ita Market. There's an Arise logo somewhere there on one of those buildings. But what I don't know is if that is a beneficiary of the empowerment of state governments or a building of the Arise initiative for any kind of year.
So those are some of the things that came up yesterday. Let us begin to take stocks. I mean, even on radio, Akwa Ibom people are beginning to ask, yes, we've seen this massive empowerment. Your Excellency, let's see the people who are benefiting so that we ourselves as Akwa Ibom people can defend you when the time comes. And if these people are messing up The same people, when they now rise up, they say, the government is not doing anything. The Akwa Ibom people will now tell them, you got 1 million, you got 2 million, you got 500,000 from the Akwa Ibom state government as a business grant. What did you do with it? And that will be the parameter that we can begin to judge ourselves. And also, that will also help the government in successive planning to now know, okay, when we give people this money, it goes into this. So you can now find an alternative to actually give out grants to people. Now, one of the things that have been commended would be the random lady that the governor demanded for machinery to be provided for her after the chance encounter, and then the 2 million naira that she requested for as a startup capital that will help her expand her business. That is what we want. It's not about, political farmers, political businessmen, political businesswomen who do not have any tangible business. They don't have any business sense. In fact, they don't have any business doing business. Because when you give somebody, entrepreneurship is not child's play. It is not a walk in the park. It's not going to the market and buying gari and coming to resell in your house. And even that going to the market to buy a bag of gari and coming back to the house to resell to your neighborhood is a serious business, because you're going to need a whole lot of discipline to be able to distinguish between your consumption, what you buy and keep in your house for consumption, and when that finishes, what do you do to the gari that okay, let's say you buy a bag of gari, you bring it home to retail, and then the one you had in your family is finished.
Throw your shade.
How are you able to discipline yourself to either buy from the one you are selling to give to your family, or ensure that your family does not dip its hands into the ones you're selling? So it's a whole lot of different dynamics that people are not paying attention to, which is why, it's encouraging that people go learn these processes. But I am excited. Now, Akwa Ibom people are excited about, these policies, because it goes all the way down to the local government. And another thing part of the things that, His Excellency Governor Pastor Umo Eno also talked about is, the issue of, training of medical doctors. But just before then, he talked about the Bank of Industry, which is also a very critical agency of government. Now, he said, we brought the Bank of Industry for the first time in Akwa Ibom State, and we have provided a counterpart fund of 2 billion naira to give our SMEs a single-digit rate of loan, or not more than 90%. Now, I have said it several times, and our Akwa Ibom people have said it. It is not about bringing policies on. It is not about attracting federal government agencies. It's about actually doing the work. And I remember during my days in, working with the SSA2, the governor, the previous administration and SMEs, one of the key things that we knew was absolutely necessary for Akwa Ibom businesses to be able to access the federal government grants and other, business grants or single-digit loans that were available was because we did not have, the Bank of Industry station in Akwa Ibom State. We had to travel all the way to either Port Harcourt or to Cross River State, or to Cross River State. Either ways to be able to access this, because the offices were not in Akwa Ibom State. So bringing the office down to Akwa Ibom State was a priority, which unfortunately difference that did not yield as at that time. But thankfully the governor has been able to bring that down. And he has not just brought that down, he's been able to provide the counterpart funding, which also shows the commitment on the part of government. Now, the next thing we'll have to monitor will be how many of our people are accessing this. Apart from the counterpart funding, there are other documents, there are other requirements that these banks require from the business owners before they can grant this loan. What other steps are the government taking to ensure that this actually happens? And then on the part of the individual, in my conversation with the leadership of NESL, one of the key issue is that people have businesses, but they don't have the information to come together, for instance, from a cooperative, or have the necessary documents that can help them access government grant. So beside providing the counterpart funding, beside bringing a Bank of Industry to Akwa Ibom State, there are lots of other things that needs to be done, which I hope, for the interest of the business community that the Akwa Ibom State government is looking at, we will consider that. Another thing that key thing that the governor said that also got the attention of Akwa Ibom people was that currently, according to the governor, we are recruiting about 100 medical doctors that will be sent abroad for training in various fields, so they reform the nucleus of our planned medical tourism in the state. They will be provided befitting living quarters, decent salaries and emoluments when they come back. Another critical area of their rights agenda that the government is speaking about. And in the moment when we're talking about brain drain in the health sector, Akwa Ibom State, we know the conversation about the fact that we are short-staffed in the different medical facilities is still very much on the ground. The need to have that lapse, those lapses filled or those gaps filled in terms of human capital or personnel is also very much available. So as much as we will say this 100 is not enough, but it's a good start. And it shows a commitment to actually taking action. Now, if we have 100 go out and come back, and another 100 go and come back, another 100 and go and come back, if the governor is able to sustain that in a period of 2, 3, 4 years of his administration, we have 400 upgraded doctors. These 400, if they come back, all of them, to give back to the community of health workers, we'll have a lot more who are more competent, and that will save us a whole lot of stress. So it's not just about the facility, but also the manpower, which is highly commendable.
Highly commendable, I must say, but of course the Vice President is still in Akwa Ibom today, and there will be a lot more of commissioning and more things for the Vice President to look at here in Akwa Ibom State. We just heard, I think it was in the words of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who recently said that state governors should take a journey to Abia State and look at what Alex Oti is doing there, that is a good example of governance. We would also say take a trip down to Akwa Ibom State and then you would see a good example of what governance is actually about. Kudos to the Akwa Ibom State government, and I do hope that the Vice President Kashim Shettima can leave a signature project endorsement for us here before he leaves.